Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Business Continuity, Managing Risk and Improving Recovery, being presented by Rajoli Services and Veeam. We've got an hour filled with lots of great information, but before we get started, there are just a couple of quick logistical notes to mention. One, so that we're still moving forward with things in a timely manner, all phone lines have been muted. Two, we don't want to miss any of your questions. So at any time during the session, you can use your Q&A panel to send us questions. We'll pass those along to our presenters and we'll get everyone's questions answered. And if not, we'll reach back out to you after the webinar. Well, today we're excited to have a great panel of experts joining us. First, I'd like to introduce Gentry Ganot, founder and CEO of Rajoli Services. Founded in 2008, Rajoli is a hybrid technology company delivering cloud-hosted infrastructure within their points of presence in Atlanta, New York City, and Phoenix. Rajoli has been leveraging Veeam-based solutions both within their data centers and with end customers for the past 7 years. Also joining our call is David Husamanica, COO of Rajoli Services. With over 30 years of experience in the technology industry, David recognized early on how cloud computing could change the IT landscape and benefit customers. He's been with Rajoli for 7 years. And our final presenter is Justin Garreau, Veeam systems engineer focused on providing solutions for service providers and partners using Veeam software. Justin has been a project engineer, sales engineer, and systems engineer in IT for over 10 years. So with all of that being said, I want to thank everyone for being here today. And David, I'll let you take the baton and start off the webinar.
Thank you, Shanta. Hello, everybody. Gentry and I are both very excited to have a chance to talk with you today. If you're in the world of IT at all, either managing it for your business or managing it for your customer's business, the topics that we're going to go through today are something that many of us lose sleep over at night. And so we're going to try to talk you through some solutions that could hopefully make you sleep better. And it's all about disaster recovery, business continuity. And we've got some really exciting things to show you today about solutions that we've assembled between Rajoli Services and Veeam that will hopefully help mitigate a lot of the concern around these things. So when you look at today's day and age, there is multiple types of disasters that we're faced with. They range the spectrum from natural disasters of hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, other natural occurring elements which you have no control over, and many times you have very little visibility, if any, that are coming. You also have disasters that are caused by just hardware or software failure, where unplanned drive goes bad or something within the system crashes and takes the systems down. And then the last area is the man-made disasters, which can range anywhere from malware to ransomware to employee theft to people doing nefarious things to you. And so when you look at these three different disaster categories, I mean, it's really a lot of them are piling up on us, and many reasons to be concerned. So Gentry, are you with us?
I'm here, David.
Okay. So Gentry, I know that you work with CIOs every day. And you yourself were a CIO for PGA Superstore. So of these categories, which would keep you up at night?
What's been really keeping me awake at night over the past year or so, maybe the past couple of years, is the man-made disasters and ransomware attacks in particular. We've seen it across several customers, and that's something that we strive to figure out how we can mitigate daily. So
Gotcha.
That's what keeps me awake.
All right. Well, you are not alone. So, recent IDC study came back and said that malware and ransomware are the most concerning to CIOs and staff in organizations. So, there's no doubt that the landscape in the disaster category has changed quite a bit. And so, what we want to do today is really talk about some solutions that will help mitigate all of these types of disasters, including malware and ransomware. So, when you think about for your business, do you really need a disaster recovery solution? There's a couple things just to keep in mind that will help you maybe formulate an opinion on whether or not, it's worth it. Is it something that you really need? So, a couple questions like, what would you be able to work if your most important server went down? And how about your employees? I mean, what really would happen to your business? And then, when you look at if you were to lose data, how much data can you afford to lose? Are you talking about minutes, hours, days? I mean, what can you really tolerate as a business? If you're a high transaction volume type of company, you might only be able to lose an hour's worth of data. And then whenever you look at things like how long could you afford to be down, and how far back do you need to recover from? So these are all questions to ask yourself. And then, do you have the ability to, if you're a lot of companies are in the, using software from cloud providers, you know, does a cloud provider protecting us, or do we need to have something to augment that? And a lot of people are fooled a bit that they think that their cloud software provider has everything covered. Give you an example. We do a lot of work in the Microsoft world, and specifically, the Office 365 space, and Microsoft handles the major disasters if your primary data center gets knocked out, but they're not really in the business of granular point in time restores. So the need to have something to augment even your cloud providers is very real, and should weigh into whether or not you need a disaster recovery solution of your own. If you look at what is the impact on the business, there's some pretty compelling numbers that can be surfaced in a hurry. Here's an example of a downtime loss calculator. And for this one example here, business with annual revenues of about 5 million, and they've got 40 employees and some other parameters. If you look at what would downtime actually cost this business, and you see the calculations in the bottom right, it can be staggering. In this case, it's almost $3,000 an hour that it would truly cost the business. And so when you're trying to determine, is it worth investing in some type of disaster recovery solution, again, keeping, actual numbers in mind like this for your business, can weigh into, justifying it. And, the bad news is, particularly in the small and medium-sized business space, there's a high percentage of the companies that do not have a true disaster recovery solution in place. So our goal today is to help fix that and get people pointed in a direction that might help them get something in place to in a cost-effective manner. So if you look at companies, and people ask all the time, okay, we're doing backups. Is backup enough? And is backups a disaster recovery solution? And the answer is, well, it might be, but you really have to ask yourself some questions about your backup plans and how you're doing that. So let's say you got a backup and you got a pretty recent backup. Your server goes down. Actually, it's an equipment failure. Where are you going to restore that backup? What's your options for actually restoring it? What other piece of equipment are you going to restore it to? Also, how often are you backing up? So, if you're backing up, daily, but you can't afford to be down, more than a couple hours, is that going to be enough? And then, things like bare metal or data only. And what that means is, if you were to do a restore, Are you bringing back everything, including the operating system, the software, as well as the data, or is it the data only? And that, that certainly impacts your ability to recover and impact how long it would take you to, or how long you would be down and how long it would rebuild that server. So, this a couple of key considerations again for, if you're trying to design a solution or acquire a solution that you need to ask yourself is how long can you be afford to be down, and there's a term that you're going to hear us talk about in more detail here in just a minute, which is RTO, which is your ability, how long can you be down. Also, how much data can you afford to lose? And then if you did have to restore, what are those options that you can restore it to? So I'd like to maybe pass the baton now, and we are going to have Gentry talk a little bit more about RPO and RTO, and then we'll come back and do some other discussions.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so two key points for designing a disaster recovery solution is you want to understand what your RPO, which is your recovery point objective, and your RTO, your recovery time objective. So the RPO is basically the time from your last backup. So that's your recovery point. So that would be a frequency of backup. So a lot of times it's once, people do a backup once a night. If you have data that changes frequently, that you want to make sure you have a smaller recovery point objective time, you might do 4 or 5 backups in a day, and that would give you smaller recovery points or less time. Recovery time objective is how long, if you have a disaster, how long will it take for you to get back up and running? So how long does it take to restore the backups to some server or virtual machine or cloud infrastructure? How long does that take before you can get back into your systems? So the recovery point objective is basically the time from the last backup, and the recovery time objective is how long does it take to actually restore from your backups. So that's RPO and RTO.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I'd like to maybe transition now, and let's talk a little about the solution that we've assembled between Rajoli and Veeam, and let's maybe start with overview of Veeam. Justin, would you mind giving us a little backdrop on Veeam for people who are not familiar with Veeam?
Yeah, sure. So with this slide, we're just kind of going over some of our bona fides, if you will, for those that aren't too familiar with Veeam. So we've been around since 2006. We were one of the first big players in the world of backing up VMs. And since then, we've expanded into backing pretty much anything up, including physical machines and 365, and even some really obscure stuff like Solaris and it'd be like Oracle RMAN. So pretty much anything you need to back up, we got it covered. We currently work with 66% of the Global 2000 and 81% of the Fortune 500. We got a couple 100,000 customers around the world in over 200 countries, and that's growing every month. Last year, we just topped over $1 billion in revenue, and we're pretty proud of that because we were one of the first companies to do it that quickly. I think we're like 34th in doing it in the first 15 years or something like that. And also, we do have a rather high NPS score, which is really just a fancy way of saying that our customers both love the product and the support that they get with it. So we put a couple of well-known names on here to kind of demonstrate that. I'm sure pretty much everyone here is pretty happy with Netflix for the most part. I mean, streams just some shows, you have some fun times. And we're actually higher than them on that score. So yeah, long story short, we're well established in the industry, and we just kind of like helping people back up and protect their data.
Yeah, that's great. We can vouch. Veeam has been a tremendous asset for us. I mean, we began our Veeam relationship really with our internal operations, where our data centers and the management of those, and then as we moved into actually building out a solution that we wanted to take to other customers, that Veeam was the number one on the list as far as us tying ourselves to that solution, and it's been a great partnership, and it's a very, very solid product we've found. So with that said, I'd like to maybe move over into talk a little bit further about the ARK. And Gentry, could you jump in and maybe give us an overview as what exactly is the ARK?
Yes, absolutely. So the ARK is an on-site appliance. It's a business continuity server is what we call it. And basically we've wrapped some hardware and services around Veeam's backup and disaster recovery software product. So we've partnered with Veeam. We provide the hardware and the services and leverage the Veeam infrastructure to provide this business continuity server. So some of the features are it's an on-site appliance. We can provide backup to physical servers. So if you have like an on-site file server or maybe an accounting server, something of that nature, maybe some sort of Dell or HP server, we can back those up. Maybe you have some sort of virtualized infrastructure where you're running, several VMs on one or more physical hosts. We can back up those VMs as well. We can also back up desktops and laptops, both on-premise and in the field, actually. We have multiple restore options. So basically, we can restore to the ARK itself. So if you had a physical server that might die, let's say a power supply blows out on your file server, we could actually restore that backup to a virtual machine on the ARK, and just we modify the networking a little bit and make sure that the file server then could be presented on your local area network. We can also restore back to another physical server. Maybe you didn't want to run as a VM, but you could, if you can have easy access to another physical server, we could restore back to that. If you had a drive crash on a particular server and you replace the drive, then we could restore back to that same physical server. The other option is we could restore to our cloud infrastructure. So let's say in an event that a ransomware attack comes and takes out all your servers, all of your workstations. Well, that's probably not a good example. Let's say we had a disaster like a tornado that just wiped out everything. In that scenario, you'd have nothing to restore to, so you would have to restore to the cloud. So we would basically turn up virtual machine images of all your physical servers and virtual servers and get those running in the cloud, modify some networking, and have you up and running in less than a day. So a lot of different variations and options on restore. So we have you covered just about any way. And of course, everything's all powered by Veeam. So,
Gentry, we get a lot of questions about, what are some of the benefits of having an on-site appliance? Can you talk to that for a minute?
Yep. So one of the main benefits for having on-site would be the recovery time objective is going to be much smaller. So like as the example, if you had the file server crash, we could turn up the backup image on the ARK in less than an hour, probably less than a half hour in many cases, and then have you up and running very quickly. So that's one of the key things about having the unit on site.
Okay. Could you maybe talk a little about you and Justin maybe talk a little about some of the advantages this solution brings to the table as opposed to maybe alternatives out there?
Yeah, so it's an all-in-one solution. We call it a white glove or a backup and disaster recovery as a service. So we would manage all the backups. We would monitor them, making sure everything's successful. We would monitor the transfer of the files to the cloud. So it's it's pretty much hands off for the customer from our service. We talked about the recovery options already. several options that are pretty awesome and covers all your bases basically. Justin, you want to talk a little bit about the self-contained portable files and the stage and the secure restores and the advantages for those?
Yeah, sure. And I also like to just kind of point out a couple things on the recovery options because not a lot of people realize this. So above and beyond the instant recoveries, which is great, if the server goes down, you can always just spin it up somewhere else. We have a lot of granular restores that you can do. So if you need to get a file from within a VM at any point in time, you don't need to go through and rehydrate the full VM to do that. What we can do is we could just mount that to your local drive. So you'll see it on like your C drive under, Veeam file level recovery folder. You can go in there and push things back where it came from. You can send it to a separate location. You can even right click and do like an email action and we'll just pull it out of the backup for you. And we do also have some application item explorers. So if you're doing anything with AD, Exchange, SharePoint, SQL, just know that you can do point-in-time restores for those specific applications. So if I need to go back to yesterday for my database, but not for the entire VM itself, I can go through and roll back the application specifically while keeping the rest of the VM in its current state. Now, in regards to the next bullet point, the self-contained portable backup files, that really just means that our backups are just fully portable. So you can take them and you can pop them into any Veeam server, even the free one from the website. So if you go to veeam.com and download backup or replication, you can then just import the backup in and you'll have all those right-click restore options from there. So you can always get your data back no matter what occurs. As long as you still have access to at least one of your backup files, we can take that, pop it into even a free version, and then you can get all that data back. Now, another cool thing we could do is the staged and secure restores. Now, what that means is the stage restores is we can go through and insert some scripting into it. So when we're bringing the VM back up, we can do some automated routines on the way there. Now, also for the secure restores, what we can do is we can take your backups and mount them somewhere. So kind of like the same thing we're doing with the granular ones where we like mount the file system so you can pull stuff from it. When we've got that mounted, we can go and actually run an antivirus scan against it. So if we want to go through and just scan it, make sure there's nothing on it. And we do support, like Windows Defender, ESET, Symantec, Kaspersky. And if you want to extend beyond that, anything with a CLI, a command line interface, we can work with that too. We really just need to know where the programming exists and what the response codes are. So you can go through and scan these guys. And it is automated. So if I want to say, hey, let's go and deploy this particular VM back to this host, let's also scan it. You do have some options there if something were to come up. You can put it on there, boot it, but disable the NIC. So, if you did find something, you can go in there and manually remove it. Or you can just fully bail out and it'll send you an error and say, hey, by the way, this thing was infected. Don't put this back on your host. So it really comes down to what you're looking to do there. Next bullet point, the flexibility to configure multiple scenarios. Really, that just means that, we're just Windows under the hood. So if we got a Windows box, we can pretty much accommodate any scenario architecture-wise. Wherever your components are, as long as we can see them on the network, we're good to go. And that just kind of rolls into the peace of mind towards the bottom here. So, your data is safe in multiple locations, kind of going back to that point, you can sleep well knowing that. Worst case scenario, everything goes away locally, you still got it somewhere else. And last but not least, it's worth noting that if you have used Veeam in the past, it's still the same product that you already know and love, but it's even better with the V10 improvements. So yeah, a lot of advantages for using this approach here.
Awesome, thanks.
So let's maybe spend a few minutes now going through and talking a little more detail about the architecture around the whole BD-RAS solution, the ARK. Gentry, you want to maybe step us through this?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we're trying to show here is the box on the left where it says customer network. That is, we're kind of taking a somewhat typical environment and how the ARK would fit into that. So on the right side, the green servers, those are representing physical servers. And on the left, it says Hyper-V with some VMs on top. That's an actual physical host that's hosting several virtual machines. It might have a domain controller on it, terminal server, maybe a VPN server. So it's kind of an environment of both virtual machines and physical servers. And then the box on the right with the big ARK logo, that is a representation of our ARK device. And so basically, it sits on the same LAN as all the other servers and does all the backup jobs to the ARK. So the ARK has not only a robust set of CPU and memory, but large storage to do the backups of all the different servers. Then we have a cloud-hosted infrastructure where we, so the backups will go from the devices on the LAN to the ARK, and then the ARK will ship a second set of backups into the cloud. So those, we call them backup copy jobs. So this provides 3 copies of your data. So the first copy is your live copy that's running on your servers. Then the second copy you have are the backups that are stored on the ARK, which is on premise. Then the third copy is we ship these backup jobs to our cloud infrastructure. So that's where you have 3 copies of your data. So that's how the ARK works.
So in this diagram, where the cloud infrastructure is Rajoli's Cloud Door, which is a private cloud infrastructure, cloud hosting infrastructure. You know, is that the only option for companies for the cloud piece of this architecture, or do they have options with other cloud providers if they so choose?
Well, I don't know why you would want another cloud provider, but if you did, you're absolutely right, David. You can use Azure, AWS, and actually Veeam has many partners that provide cloud storage that the Veeam appliance can talk to. Since the ARK is running Veeam, so you have a bunch of different cloud-based options.
Gotcha. So we have talked about you know, the need to have multiple restore options and scenarios. You want to step us through, you know, some examples of how the ARK can facilitate these different restore options?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first example, let's say that the SQL Server drives crash. Okay, that's that top green server. So you were the company was could easily get some new disk drives. They put the new disk drives in the SQL Server, get it all fired back up. We could then restore from a backup on the ARK back to the SQL Server and have it up and running in short order. So if you had a new server, let's say the SQL Server's power supplies and disk drives burnt up or something, if you were able to purchase a new server quickly, you can then restore the image to the new server as opposed to the original server, and it figures out how to manage the hardware and the drivers and things like that. The third option, you know, especially if you're worried about your recovery time objective, your RTO, you could restore the backup to a virtual machine running on the ARK. And like I said, the recovery time for something like that is, you know, minutes, tens of minutes. So you could restore it quickly. And you know, the objective is to size the ARK properly to make sure it can run the VM locally on the ARK. So that's an important piece when you figure out how to size the ARK. Lastly, you could restore to the cloud infrastructure. So in an example where, you know, maybe there was a flood or the ceiling leaks and destroys your computer room or something, we could restore all the VMs into the cloud. Now your recovery time objective there might be a little longer because we've got to make sure that all the networking pieces are in place, and there could be some DNS changes or some different things. So we like to say that you could get that restored in about a day if you have to restore to the cloud. You know, at least think about a day, but it's probably less than that. Just depends on the scenario. And like Justin mentioned earlier, we can restore files from any of our backup images. So, you know, so let's say somebody deleted a file a week ago. We keep 14 days retention of all backups. So they figured out that, hey, they deleted this important Excel document and that happened about 4 days ago or 5 days ago, we can easily mount that backup from that time period and restore the file back to where it needs to be. So a lot of different restore options there.
Great, thank you. So I'd just like to remind everybody, we do want you to ask questions. If you're not familiar, you can ask questions in the chat in the window. Please put those in, and as we're going through the remainder of the presentation here, we'll do our best to either answer them during it or we'll answer them at the end, but I'd like to hear from you. One question we a lot of times get, Gentry, is, how often can this thing do backups? I mean, is it fixed or is it under our control?
Yeah, so the frequency of backups is completely under our control. Like we were talking about, like domain controllers, their data is not going to change too often. So those might be backed up nightly. And let's say you have an accounting server that also communicates with your SQL server on the back end. You might want to back those things up maybe, at in the morning, around 10 o'clock, maybe at lunchtime, 2 o'clock, and at the end of the day. So your recovery point objective is narrowed if there were a particular disaster. So totally flexible and programmable.
Good. All right, so a little transition here. We'd like to maybe now show you a couple of screen grabs from the environment, just to give you a little bit more visual on what the user interface and all that looks like. And remember, you may not ever need to even get into any of these screens, because we do offer the ARK as a service, backup disaster recovery as a service, which means that we'll be monitoring and managing it on your behalf. But Gentry, you want to maybe take just a couple minutes? We can flip through a couple of example screens.
Yeah, I want to answer this question in the chat window there. The question is, does ARK include monitoring services, and is there an extra fee? So when we do our white glove or backup and disaster recovery as a service, the monitoring is included and there is no extra fee for that. So thanks for that question. But yeah, so what we're showing here is this is the Veeam backup and replication application, and we're actually on the backup jobs. And this is a live customer example. They have a file server, they have an SAP server, terminal server, and a domain controller. And this just shows the backup jobs. You can see that the SAP server, the second one down, his frequency of backups is I think every 2 hours, so it happens fairly frequently. And this, we've had that job selected, and it shows you the results of the last backup job, and all the nice green check boxes, so no errors or anything, which is nice.
Green is good.
Green is good. Now these are the backup copy jobs. So what that means is we copy the backups to the cloud. So you have the backups are stored in multiple locations. That's one of the awesome functions of the Veeam backup and replication software. So you can see that it's going to the cloud. It's going to our Rajoli cloud repository, and so it's basically backing up, doing a backup copy of each of the backups. That's what this screen's showing. And this is a detailed screen on that one backup job that was for the SAP server. It ran at midnight, basically. So it's the VM's about 3 terabytes. So green is good. And then this is just a backup copy job, showing that it's getting backed up and stored into the cloud.
Very good. Well, I wanted to give everybody just a quick example of what some of the screens behind the scenes look like and the visibility to everything that's going on. Now, kind of building on the scenarios that Gentry just went through, want to just kind of step through an actual example that a customer may face around a ransomware attack and how that would unfold as far as getting back up and running. So, the scenario is ransomware attackers are able to get to the domain admin privileges and connect to the network, and all servers and workstations end up being encrypted. And so, users get into the office and discover, oh no, something very bad has happened. They can't get and open any of their systems or any of their files. Of course, they reach out to us about the incident. We begin to initiate the restores of all the server backups from the backup copy jobs to VMs in the Rajoli cloud infrastructure. So this is an example where we're going to get them back up and running through the cloud infrastructure while the on-site equipment and everything ends up being remediated. Of course, there's a few networking changes that would need to take place to redirect or point people to the cloud infrastructure, and then we would restore all the network, or all the workstations, and make sure that they can connect into the cloud network. And then the users are back at work. So, in this scenario, you've got a restore time of about 4 hours to accomplish those items, and a restore point of about eight hours. So, very real scenario that many companies are facing. And so that's just to give you an example of how that recovery process would potentially work. So we've had a couple questions about pricing and how all that works. So we've created a number of models of the ARK Veeam solution, and these different models are oriented towards different size infrastructures that they may need to back up and restore. These models, really the key components of the models are, how much storage capacity, how much cloud storage, how much RAM would be needed in order to facilitate all of that. And so you can see there's a number of models, and it starts at the 2 terabyte storage and goes on up to 48 terabyte. And as Gentry mentioned, there's a tower version, and that's kind of what we've been looking at. The image here is the ARK in a tower version, but we also have 1U and also now 2U versions of the ARK, depending on which form factor would work best for you. From a pricing standpoint, we've tried to be very, very competitive with this. And remember, this is priced out as a service. So you're not having to buy equipment, you're not having to buy software. All of that is bundled into this solution. And if you look at where pricing starts at the lower end, it can be as little as $295 a month. So that would get your ARK device, that would include all the Veeam software, that would include all the back end cloud infrastructure, as well as our team managing and monitoring the environment. So all that's wrapped into that one low monthly price. And so we've got models again that can scale to be to accommodate different size infrastructures. And of course the price will scale a little bit with it, but more than happy to explore those further if you have a specific environment that you're interested in getting priced out. Which brings us to how do you get that detailed information? So we'd like to offer everybody who is here on the webinar a chance to get some free money or free credit. We're offering a $25 Amazon gift card to everybody who's on here. And all you need to do to collect your prize is go to rajoli.com. You can see the URL and go to the Contact Us page and fill out the request form on the Contact Us page. And we will send you the Amazon gift card. And we are having to limit this to the first 25 people who put in their information or put in the request. And of course, you limit one per company, but make it worth your while to reach out to us and learn more. We'll be happy to take a look at your exact environment and see which of the models would be the best fit for what it is that you are needing to protect. So reach out to us, rajoli.com, contact us page. So, we've like to just kind of wrap up here and talk a little bit more about what Rajoli does overall. These are our 4 pillars of our business. We've been spending our time today really in this bottom left quadrant, talking about our business continuity environments and solutions with the ARK and Veeam and Cloud Door. But we also have practices that focus on all the collaboration needs of a company. So this is driven a lot by Office 365, SharePoint, Teams. So if your business is considering or trying to roll out or try to re-implement some of those solutions, we can help you with any of the needs around migration as well as activation and training of any of these collaboration solutions. On our cloud hosting, this is our Cloud Door offering, which is a private cloud, but we also do Azure and Amazon cloud. So if you prefer to have a public cloud offering, we can equally get in there and help you set those up and spin up whatever environments that are necessary for that. And then finally, in the bottom right is our managed services around office management. So we can become your complete help desk for managing all the desktop and mobile devices, as well as any other devices in your business, including phones and others. So we become your help desk environment for supporting your users. So we'd love to hear from you, of course, around the ARK and business continuity. But if any of these other things are of interest, obviously we would certainly love to talk with you about that as well. So we're going to go kind of wrap things up here. Gentry, thank you very much for your input today. I'd like to maybe go and take on a few more questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Shanta. I've got a few more questions here queued up, but Shanta, why don't I turn it over to you and you can inform people on how to ask more questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, David. Great content, gentlemen. The Rajoli ARK and Veeam partnership is perfect together, and this webinar spoke directly to that. So truly appreciate your time today. But before we get to the Q&A, I would like to also remind everyone that we are recording this session. So afterwards, you'll receive a thank you email that includes a link to the presentation. So please feel free to share that with your colleagues that may have missed the event today. So David, with that, please talk a little bit more about those questions that we have in the queue.
Okay. Well, we had one about the cost, and I think we covered that. And again, reminding, our solution is a as a service offering, which is a bundled solution. We did have one about different configuration options, which we did look at those different models. Who do we call for support? That's a good one. So Rajoli becomes your single point of contact. So if you were to, decide that you didn't want us to manage it completely for you, and you want to take over some of the responsibilities for managing the environment and doing restores, we would be your single point of contact. We have a fully staffed help desk to take your calls. We would then engage with you to help whatever the issue is, or with whatever the restore needs you have to help you get back up and running. So single point of contact for not only the solution, but also the support around that. And then if we need to escalate anything with the Veeam team, we have direct channels and be able to escalate that. Let's see. Another one is there extra fee for the monitoring service? And no, all of that is included in the as a service pricing that we have done with this product solution. So the monitoring and the management of the environment is all something that's already included in your cost. So again, we have a NOC that that will monitor all the devices that are in the field and will act upon any messages or any errors that are surfaced through that.
I think there's one other one, David.
Okay.
Does the ARK pricing include the Veeam licensing, or is there a separate fee for the Veeam licensing? Nope, everything is all contained in the 1 monthly fee, and that's determined by the size of the ARK primarily from a storage capacity and then a cloud capacity. So everything's all included in the 1 monthly price.
Okay, very good. Let me see, is there any other questions? I think that covers them all. If you have any other questions, feel free to again input them, or if you want to, our emails are here on the screen, Gentry's as well as mine. Feel free to ping us directly with an email with any other questions that you may have. So I think that is the end of our presentation here. I hope this has helped you answer some questions about an affordable solution that might be certainly worthwhile in your business to help protect your environment. And once again, thank you, Shanta, thank you, Gentry, thank you, Justin, for your input today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Great, again, great
Nice job.
conversation, guys. We really do appreciate you taking the time. And I'd also like to say thank all of you that joined the line to learn more about Veeam and Rajoli. We appreciate you taking the time today. And we look forward to hopefully doing business with you.
Thank you.
I know.
Take care, everyone.
All right, have a good one.